The Seattle Seahawks just pulled off something the NFL hasn't seen in years. And it's not just another win, it's a warning shot. In a league where offenses light up scoreboards every Sunday, Seattle walked away with a 26-0 shutout, even though their own quarterback couldn't find a rhythm and their star receiver barely touched the ball. That shouldn't happen in 2025, but it did. And the most unsettling part? It felt effortless for them, like they knew exactly how this game would unfold before the opening kickoff. What makes this victory so unnerving is that nothing about it looked perfect. Sam Darnold spent most of the night under pressure, forced into late throws with no clean pocket. Jackson Smith-Njigba, expected to be the engine of the passing game, was all but erased by Minnesota's defense. Yet, none of it mattered. Because while the offense sputtered, the defense didn't just hold the line, it rewrote the rules. They didn't need highlight reel blitzes or lucky bounces. They simply made every snap feel like a trap for rookie quarterback Max Bromer, turning routine plays into disasters and turning Minnesota's offense into a ghost on the field. This wasn't a fluke, it was a blueprint. And the real story isn't just how Seattle won, it's how they made a full NFL offense disappear without breaking a sweat. The turnovers, the pressure, the way they neutralized Justin Jefferson like he was just another decoy, this all points to something far bigger brewing in the NFC. So what exactly did the Seahawks do to turn a high-stakes matchup into a total lockdown? The answer starts with 5 critical takeaways that changed everything. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Seahawks and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 200 likes on this video. The Seattle Seahawks didn't just beat the Minnesota Vikings, they dismantled them with surgical precision, forcing 5 turnovers that didn't feel like mistakes so much as inevitabilities. From the first series, rookie quarterback Max Bromer looked like he was playing in quicksand. Every read closed before he could pull the trigger, every clean pocket vanished in a blink, and the few times he tried to force a throw, it landed in the hands of a Seahawks defender. That kind of pressure doesn't come from luck. It comes from a defense that knows how to make a young quarterback doubt everything he sees. Minnesota entered the game hoping to lean on Justin Jefferson, but Seattle treated him like a threat that had to be surgically removed. Bracket coverage, safety help over the top, and physical jams at the line turned one of the league's most explosive weapons into a decoy. With their top target neutralized and rookie Max Bromer scrambling to find answers, the Vikings offense stalled on nearly every drive. They finished the game converting only around 20% on third down, a number that tells you just how suffocated they felt. Even when they tried to adjust, Seattle's discipline never wavered. They stayed patient, stayed connected, and waited for Minnesota to crack. The result was a game that never felt competitive after the first quarter, even though the scoreboard didn't explode early. That's the signature of a defense that doesn't just react, it controls the entire pace of the game. And while the turnovers tell part of the story, the real engine behind this chaos wasn't just scheme or speed, it was the men up front, turning every snap into a nightmare before the ball even left Max Bromer's hands. So who exactly turned the line of scrimmage into a no-fly zone? That's where the front four's relentless dominance takes center stage. If you want to understand why the Minnesota Vikings never found their footing, look no further than the line of scrimmage, because that's where the Seattle Seahawks turned a promising offense into a guessing game with no right answers. DeMarcus Lawrence, once written off as a fading veteran, played like he'd been reborn. Not just beating blocks, but reading plays before they developed. He wasn't just chasing the quarterback, he was dictating the entire rhythm of Minnesota's offense. Crashing down on screens, chasing ball carriers from behind, and even punching the ball loose on a short pass that should have been safe. What made this front so dangerous wasn't just individual talent, it was how each piece amplified the others. With DeMarcus Lawrence drawing constant double teams, Leonard Williams found more one-on-one opportunities inside, collapsing the pocket from the middle. On the edge, Byron Murphy Jr. and Uchenna Nwosu feasted on single blocks, flushing rookie Max Bromer into traps he couldn't see coming. Even when Seattle didn't blitz, the illusion of pressure was enough to force hurried decisions. And when Aaron Jones ripped at the ball on a checkdown and Boy Mayfair closed in like a heat-seeking missile, it became clear there was no safe option for Minnesota's offense. This wasn't a unit relying on wild stunts or gimmicks. It was disciplined, intelligent, and explosive when it mattered most. They didn't need to sack the quarterback 6 times to dominate. They just needed to make him feel hunted on every drop back. And that constant unease up front flowed directly into the next layer of Seattle's defensive machine. A back seven that didn't just cover receivers, they anticipated throws, jumped routes, and turned every mistake into a potential 6 points. That's where the real turnover clinic began. While the front four made life miserable for rookie Max Bromer, it was the Seahawks secondary and linebackers who turned that pressure into points. Ernest Jones didn't just play coverage. He rewrote what a modern linebacker can be, reading Brosmer's eyes, breaking on throws with uncanny timing, and sprinting 40 yards for a pick six that didn't just shift momentum, it shattered Minnesota's will. With that interception, Jones pushed his season total to 5, placing him among the league's elite playmakers, not just among linebackers, but overall. He wasn't alone. Reek Woolen showed why he's one of the most aggressive corners in the game, jumping a slant so cleanly, he nearly took it to the house before a rare review wiped it off the board. Minutes later, Kobe Bryant was there to snag a deflection and seal another drive-killing turnover. Behind them, Julian Love, Tyrese Knight, and Drake Thomas rotated with precision, closing passing lanes, wrapping up tackles, and never letting a broken play turn into a big gain. These weren't just defenders filling space. They were hunters waiting for the front to flush their prey into the open. What's truly unnerving is how coordinated it all looked. Every tip pass, every late throw, every panicked check down, it felt like the Seahawks were expecting it. And that's because they were. This isn't random opportunism. It's a defense built to weaponize mistakes. But none of this synergy happens by accident. It takes a mastermind who sees the field like a chessboard and trusts his players to execute with instinct and intelligence. That's where one man's vision ties every snap together, and his name is Mike McDonald. Behind every disciplined tackle, every perfectly timed blitz, and every route jumped with confidence stands Mike McDonald, the quiet architect turning the Seattle Seahawks into one of the most cohesive defensive units in football. While other teams chase offensive fireworks, McDonald focused on something quieter but far more lasting: structure, intelligence, and trust. His defense doesn't gamble, it anticipates. It doesn't panic, it controls. And in just one season, he's made players many overlooked look indispensable. Consider Tyrese Knight, once seen as a depth safety, now locking down critical snaps like a seasoned veteran. Or Drake Thomas, flying around the field with a sense of purpose that belies his limited draft pedigree. Even Ernest Jones, labeled a run stuffer when he arrived, now roams the middle like a quarterback whisperer, sniffing out throws before they happen. McDonald didn't just plug players into roles, he reshaped how they see the game. Veterans like DeMarcus Lawrence and Leonard Williams aren't just recycling old talent. They're playing with renewed clarity because the system elevates them, not the other way around. This isn't a flash-in-the-pan performance. It's the early foundation of a defensive identity built to endure. McDonald's philosophy echoes the great units of Pittsburgh and Baltimore, but with a modern twist. Speed, disguise, and versatility woven into every snap. And while the Seahawks' past glory featured household names like Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, and Earl Thomas, this new era isn't trying to copy it. It's carving its own path, one shutout at a time. Yet, for all this defensive brilliance, there's another side of the ball that still leaves room for doubt, and it starts with a quarterback trying to find his footing behind a struggling line. For all the dominance on defense, the Seattle Seahawks offense didn't just sputter. It looked out of sync for most of the afternoon, and the heart of the issue started up front. Sam Darnold wasn't careless, but he was constantly under siege, with clean pockets vanishing before he could set his feet. Throws that usually hit receivers in stride arrived late or died at the line, not because of poor reads, but because the protection collapsed faster than the play could develop. This wasn't a quarterback failing. It was an offensive line facing a complex, aggressive front from Brian Flores and coming up short. Jackson Smith-Njigba, expected to be the offense's security blanket, barely saw the ball. Minnesota's game plan zeroed in on taking him away early, and Seattle never found a consistent counter. That left Cooper Kupp, Rashid Shaheed, and even tight end A.J. Barner to fight for tough yards after the catch just to keep drives alive. There was effort, yes, but not rhythm. Not the kind of flow that lets an offense breathe, let alone dominate. Still, credit where it's due. When the pocket crumbled, these playmakers didn't disappear. They made contested grabs, fought for extra yards, and kept the chains moving just enough to stay in the game. What's clear is this version of Seattle doesn't need offensive perfection to win, but it does need more stability up front. Anthony Bradford and Olu Oluwatimi, both still growing into their roles, faced overload schemes and late movement that turned simple protections into guessing games. And yet, even with the passing game stuck in neutral, the Seahawks found a way to finish strong. Not with bombs downfield or highlight reel throws, but with a steady punishing ground game that wore Minnesota down when it mattered most. That's where the real power of this team's identity comes into focus. When the passing game stalled and the pocket turned hostile, the Seattle Seahawks didn't panic, they pivoted. And that pivot came in the form of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, two backs who turned modest yardage into massive momentum. Their final stat line, 125 yards on 32 attempts at 3.9 yards per carry. Won't light up highlight reels, but it told a story of control, patience, and physicality. Every carry in the second half chipped away not just at Minnesota's defense, but at their hope. Seattle leaned into heavy sets, using extra tight ends like A.J. Barner to seal edges and create leverage on the left side. The offensive line, shaky in pass protection, found its footing when asked to fire forward instead of retreat. Kenneth Walker ran with vision and balance, cutting back when lanes closed. Zach Charbonnet punished tired defenders with power, grinding out tough yards after contact and, crucially, staying in bounds to keep the clock ticking. These weren't explosive runs, but they were surgical. Each first down stole more time, each carry made Minnesota's comeback math steeper. This is the Seahawks' hidden advantage in tight games. When the air game falters, they can drop the hammer on the ground and let their elite defense rest just long enough to stay fresh for the next series. It's an old-school formula dressed in modern packaging, no flash, no panic, just relentless execution. And with the defense capable of pitching a shutout, that kind of ball control offense doesn't just help, it seals the deal. Which brings us to the bigger question. Where does this win place Seattle in a crowded NFC race, and what happens if they start clicking on both sides at once? The answer could shake up the entire playoff picture. With a 9-3 record and a defense that just shut out a playoff hopeful team, the Seattle Seahawks aren't just in the NFC West conversation, they're suddenly leading it. A critical swing came not from their own performance alone, but from the Carolina Panthers' stunning upset over the Los Angeles Rams, which handed Seattle a golden opportunity. Now, with tiebreakers and head-to-head matchups looming, every game carries postseason weight, and the Seahawks control their path to hosting a January game at Lumen Field. Their remaining schedule includes a massive showdown with the Rams, plus matchups against the Atlanta Falcons, Indianapolis Colts, and that same Carolina Panthers team proving they can't be overlooked. Meanwhile, the Rams still face the red-hot Detroit Lions and a tricky divisional test against the Arizona Cardinals. The road isn't easy for anyone, but Seattle's formula gives them a unique edge. They don't need perfect offensive performances. They don't need shootouts. They just need enough from Sam Darnold, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cooper Kupp, and their backfield to let their defense strangle opponents into submission. And that's what should send chills through the rest of the conference. This win over Minnesota came on a day when the offense was far from its best, yet the final score read 26-0. Imagine what happens when the line holds up, the passing game finds rhythm, and Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet keep defenses honest. Pair that with a unit that's already forcing turnovers at an elite rate, and you've got a team nobody wants to face in January. The NFL didn't just witness a shutout, they saw a blueprint for how Seattle plans to survive and possibly dominate when the stakes are highest.